Hello, I'm MC Toon. In the last episode, I asked a question: is the legal action on 5G court case a scam intended to deprive gullible electrosensitives of their money? So unless you're an electrosensitive, you've probably guessed the answer to this question is yes. If you are an electrosensitive, please just hold off buying that Shungite pyramid or the EMF harmonizing hologram sticker. Today's episode is dedicated to you. It's about how people take advantage of you and some of the trouble it can lead to. Because as we've already established, if you are suffering from an entirely imaginary disease, it's pretty easy to fall for any number of scams, quacks, and lies designed to pander to your particular delusion. In the last episode, I mentioned Karen Churchill, Sally Beer, Professor Butler, and Lorna Hackett. These people running and promoting the legal action against 5G court case. I asked them to respond, and I got nothing at all. None of them replied. They didn't email to say we got something wrong or even call me a bully or a government shill. Well, which is nice, but, it's not too useful. But we do know that they watched it because we know they discussed it, and individuals very close to people I was speaking about have commented on my video. But they chose not to respond, even though there were a few errors in the previous video. For example, I've learned that Michael Mansfield QC is actually involved with the case. I've seen his name on the court documents. And yes, I've obtained all the court documents. I can totally understand why Sally Beer, Tom Butler, and Karen Churchill and Lorna Hackett don't want to talk about this case. Anything they could say in their defense would just draw more attention to how ridiculous and doomed their legal case is. We ran these papers by a number of British lawyers. Their average reaction I got was incredulity. They use words like bollocks, crackpot, and one even called it bonkers. Like I said, they're British lawyers. Today I want to share one of the most bollocks sections from the legal action against 5G pleadings. The word is never going to sound right coming from me. These documents are a handful of 100 pages of the kind of wackadoodle hallucinatory nonsense you might get if instead of hiring a lawyer, you hired Alex Jones and told him that you wouldn't let him out of the pink padded cell until he'd eaten all of the magic mushrooms. Remember when I joked that one of the claimants might be electrosensitive? Well, I was right about that, except that it's not one person, it's everybody. The claimant's sister, her daughter, the lawyer's assistant, even their expert witness. They're all electrosensitives. And just a reminder, we're talking about electrical hypersensitivity, often abbreviated EHS, which is an entirely fictional disease in which the sufferer believes themselves to be able to detect the effects of low-power radio waves. This, of course, has no scientific support, but let's not allow small things like science and evidence to ruin a perfectly hilarious court case. This brings us to a new claimant introduced in the most recent filing. Her name is Rosalind Rock. She's 53 and lives in Chiswick, which is a nice suburb in the west of London. We didn't mention her before because we didn't know about her. She wasn't mentioned in any of the previous letters that the legal action sent to the court, and that's probably because Lorna Hackett, the lawyer who wrote the court documents, didn't know her back in the summer of 2020. She was sitting in her home sometime in April 2020, and all of a sudden she began to feel a prickling sensation, something like bee stings and wasp stings all over her body. Now, I've been stung by both a bee and a wasp on separate occasions, so this was clearly twice as bad. The next day, Rosalind's sister and daughter came to visit her. They had a chat in Rosalind's backyard. 2 days later, they also reported similar symptoms, but this time with blistering and bleeding on their skin. So Rosalind posted this forum on the legal action on 5G. My sister and I suffered terribly electrical zaps all over our body, turning into blisters and bleeding, burning under the rib cage, pins and needles of the hands, headache, and fog brain, plus legs like jelly. And lots of crazy dreams. This stuff has to stop now. It's so dangerous to human health, and we are not lab rats. We are human beings, and we are being treated disgracefully. I cannot think of a more crueler way than to treat a human being this way. It is so downtrodden. Pins and needles and crazy dreams. Well, this is far out stuff. After some investigation, Rosalind Rock became aware that her entire neighborhood had been surrounded by 5G transmitters. This would be last summer, just at the time when Mark Steele was making his hilariously wrong series of videos in which he claimed that Gateshead Council were putting 5G transmitters into lampposts, and many councils were upgrading to more energy-efficient LED lighting.
You've got them out on the streets outside. The LED streets outside, by the way, are a killer.
The 5G LED light weapons.
It's not a street light. That is a weapon. And this is a blatant weapons program. It is not a street light.
Isn't it funny how all 5G nunnery roads lead back to Mark Steele? He's the center of their universe. Even people like Sally Beer, she's still endorsing a court case that's based on his zany madcap conspiracy theories. Nobody else was talking about 5G and lampposts last summer, except Mark Steele. We covered Mark's lies extensively last year. We looked at the manual, the FCC test certificate. Lee Porter did a teardown of his device and explained all the bits inside it. Andrew McNeil examined the antenna and confirmed that it's not a high-gain antenna. It's a lighting controller that controls the lights in a lamppost. What else would it be?
This is a weapon system.
No, it's just a lamppost.
The LED street lights are only masquerading as a street light. They are a weapon.
Mark, it's just street lighting. Rosalind made a Freedom of Information request to the local council demanding to know why they were putting 5G transmitters inside the streetlights. Yeah, like Mark Steele. Predictably, Hounslow Council replied back that there weren't any. Rosalind thought she knew for sure that the council must be lying to her because she had found this Arkiva transmitter on the other side of her backyard fence. It's a component of the low-energy network used to control lights and sensors in her neighborhood. She'd been watching enough Mark Steele videos to believe that these things really were 5G. No, it's not 5G, and despite a complete lack of evidence and a total misunderstanding of the technology, she began to wonder if this transmitter on top of a lamppost was the cause of the symptoms she'd been experiencing. Rosalind spoke with her neighbors and found that many of them were also suffering from a diverse range of symptoms. Rosalind gathered a list which her lawyers helpfully copied into the court documents. Radiation zaps to her face, blisters on her legs, radiation burns and blisters on her arms, skin rashes and itching and a prickly sensation over her body, bleeding from her bottom, abdominal pains, bleeding from her nose. A strange lump appeared in her mouth, white marks on her cheeks, burning of the lungs and burning of the liver, weakness in her legs, tightness in her throat, detachment from people, a clouded brain and confusion, and headaches. Clouded brain and confusion seems to describe quite a lot of the people that I talk about on this channel. Could 5G be responsible for flat earthers? Well, in September 2020, Lorna Hackett and her legal administrator, Susie Openshaw, came to Rosalind's house to take her statement. After a few minutes of sitting in her garden, Ms. Openshaw began to feel a painful tingling in her foot, fearing that she too is becoming irradiated by the deadly 5G death rays.
Design that actually collimate or beamwave energy signal, and I know it's 5G. This is another thing a lot of people don't understand. 5G's been around for a long, long time. You know, you can go back to the Ark of the Covenant.
Rosalind, Lorna, and Susie went into Rosalind's kitchen where Susie began to feel a headache and a sore throat.
Because I'm terrorising the population and telling them that 5G's a weapon system The LED streetlights are toxic and kill all biological life. I can see you, I can kill you, I can kill you, and I can kill you.
And then we can kill you.
In the document, she also reports that she felt a sense of brain fog. Now, that's symptom again. One of them noticed that the windows in Rosalind's kitchen felt warm to the touch. Yeah, for some reason they put this in the claim document. Well, then they left the house so that Rosalind could show Lorna and Susie the nearby lampposts. As the three women approached them, Susie's headache worsened. They walked up to the post with some communication gear on the top. Ms. Hackett, the lawyer, she also began to experience a sharp pain, which decreased as they headed away. After the painful trip to the streetlights, they all returned to Rosalind's yard. Susie's symptoms grew worse, and she became red in the face. Ms. Hackett began to feel goosebumps, which she later described as a frisson similar to experiencing music. She claims to have spaced out, brain fogged, and felt unsure if she was able to drive. Now, the document doesn't actually say whether she did drive home. I really hope she didn't. Don't fog and drive. A few days after this interview, Rosalind contacted Dr. Andrew Tressiter, a medical doctor who also believes himself to be an electrosensitive. I'm guessing that Lorna Hackett sent Rosalind to Dr. Tressiter. Now, did Dr. Andrew grab his copy of Fitzpatrick's Color Atlas and Synopsis of Clinical Dermatology, then match her symptoms to known conditions and prescribe appropriate treatment? No. He did a physical examination, looked at her case history, and diagnosed Rosalind as suffering from exposure to non-ionizing radiation. I'll come back to this later. Meanwhile, Lorna Hackett returned to her home where she began to recover from her ordeal. She disabled all the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth devices in her county home. She states that it took her 3 whole months to be well enough to resume her work. After these 3 months, the Legal Action Against 5G team issued this statement. We have qualitatively moved from the threat of risk without proper assessment to the discovery by the claimants of actual damage being caused with every minute that goes by, and a blatant failure by government to recognize or respond to this by word or deed. Over the course of several months, the campaign team hired some companies to do electromagnetic surveys of the area around Rosalind's house. The first company confirmed that Rosalind's house was indeed in a 5G area. 3 of the nearby 4 transmitters were 5G enabled. That's really not surprising given that most of London has 5G. A second survey found that near one of the transmitters, the highest signal density was less than 3% of the IC and IRP allowable safe limits. Yeah, just that little. No mention was made of the signal strength in Ms. Rock's yard and kitchen, or what deadly energy had caused her windows to feel warm. And that's it. That's the actual damage upon which this entire court case hangs. This bizarrely inconclusive story about a poor lady who seems to be experiencing some sort of unpleasant skin disorder. We don't know what caused Rosalind and her friends to feel unwell. There's lots of things that can produce these kinds of symptoms. Headaches, sore throats, skin discomfort, and a general feeling of unease are symptoms for hundreds of different illnesses and conditions. Anybody who's lived to adulthood should know this. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to speculate what might have caused these symptoms. On the other hand, it's easy to speculate about what did not cause these symptoms. They are completely inconsistent with damage from low power, non-ionizing cell phone radio waves. And this was confirmed by the 2 studies the legal team commissioned. Did Rosalind think she was getting irradiated by the streetlights outside her home? Did she watch Mark Steele's scam videos last summer about phased array streetlights and conclude that she was definitely experiencing this firsthand? These days, Mark Steele seems to have learned his lesson. He doesn't talk about phased arrays or high-gain dielectric antennas as much. Instead, he talks about being a prophet and the Lion of God. Mark has moved on from this version of his grift, but quite a few of his former followers still believe it, and believe it enough to take their case to the High Court. And what of the warm windows? There's a simple explanation, and it actually does involve strong electromagnetic radiation. Radiation millions of times stronger than you get from 5G or a lamppost. You see, Lorna Hackett's statement didn't account for the giant fusion ball in the center of our solar system. It bombards our planet with high-power EMFs all day, every day. So much electromagnetic radiation that it can even warm up a window. In England, in September. You see, it was a sunny day in September. That was why they were in the backyard in the first place. I need to say something serious about Dr. Tressiter, because this gets me angry. It does seem that Rosalind, Lorna, Susie, and the rest experienced a real reaction to something in her home. Rosalind went to Dr. Tressiter, but he didn't diagnose her. He told her what he wanted it to be, what the court case needed it to be. We are certain he's wrong because according to their own electromagnetic surveys, the cause cannot be 5G. The power output from the cell tower is tiny. A proper diagnosis would identify a potential cause of the problem. Instead, this disgusting quack intentionally misdiagnosed the condition, making it impossible for his victim, Rosalind, to address the real cause of her problem. Thanks to Dr. Tressiter, she won't get the treatment she really needs. Rosalind, Lorna, Susie, and everyone else that experienced some effects at Rosalind's home, I hope you make a full recovery. I hope you find the actual cause of the problem. This is a sad story. The lawyers who are running this case are taking advantage of Rosalind. They are using you, Rosalind, preventing you from getting a correct diagnosis from a real doctor, someone who isn't a quack. If any of the people in this case had even a basic understanding of physics, they'd be able to see that their own surveys prove that whatever Rosalind is suffering from isn't caused by 5G. The case is doomed, and their best evidence proves that they don't have a case. And what about Sally Beer, who's been promoting this case for a year? Was she entirely ignorant of its contents? Or did she promote it because she truly believed in Mark Steele's crackpot conspiracy theories? Only Sally can answer this question. Well, please subscribe to this channel. We will be covering this story again. There's so much more to cover, and we haven't yet had time to discuss it. Thanks for watching.